This is a video that I'm not really recording for any particular purpose or to make any particular opinion. Effectively, I'm sitting here, it's Saturday night, we're waiting for the boxing to come on Sky, so killing a bit of time, and on my YouTube I got recommended to rewatch, well, it came up automatically, Floyd Mayweather versus Oscar de la Hoya. So I decided, I haven't seen that fight for a very long time, thought I'd flick it on, have a look at it. And I must say, on that day, Oscar de la Hoya really could have beaten Floyd Mayweather. He really could have done. I'm not saying I disagree with the decision in question. I'm not saying that Oscar necessarily deserved to win. I did score it very, very close indeed. Very close. But it's not what I'm getting at. Isn't that Oscar should have... Well, it's not that he deserved the decision. But what I'm getting at is with one or two minimal adjustments, he could very, very easily have won that fight. And for me, it's a bit of a surprise. This is Oscar de la Hoya, who'd lost twice to Shane Mosley. This is a guy who'd just been stopped by Bernard Hopkins. This is a guy who'd lost to Felix Trinidad. Oscar de la Hoya is a good fighter, but for me, I kind of remember him. I don't necessarily think of him as a boxer in Floyd Mayweather's league, historically. I know he had some great nights, I know he had huge success, but this is a guy who I probably wouldn't consider an all-time great, pure fighter. And he really did give Floyd Mayweather a lot of problems, and it was one of those the first thing to mention is the size difference. They look like they're separated by two weight divisions, in my opinion, and that obviously is a relevant factor. But not only was Oscar the bigger man, not only did he seem to be landing the more powerful punches, but he gave Floyd issues in a number of different areas. Activity was an obvious one, as is the case with a lot of Floyd Mayweather fights. How you judge it depends on, do you prefer the opponent's come forward aggression, volume, or do you prefer Floyd's low volume, clean work? Invariably, the judges seem to side with Floyd. But what I would say is Floyd was very low volume at times, especially sort of in the middle of this fight. And Oscar, the way he fought, there were some similarities to Oscar's attack and Marcus Maidana's attack. Flurries of punches, come forward, mauling, aggression, big man tactics, using a weight advantage. I did see some similarities. I personally thought Oscar was more successful than Maidana in either fight. I'm not one of these people who necessarily agrees that the first fight was even that competitive. But I think Oscar and Maidana had the same sort of come forward aggression and same sort of approach of pushing Mayweather back, getting him against the ropes and then landing flurries. But I think Oscar's attacks were probably more technically sound than Marcus Maidana's. I think the other thing that I wanted to build upon is the body punching of Oscar de la Hoya. It was effective. He was landing. They were scoring. There was some debate with the commentary team about how relevant those punches were, but they were landing punches regularly on Floyd Mayweather. Often, I think there's one occasion he lands 10 punches on Floyd's ribs in 2 or 3 seconds, all of them landing shots. This is not the kind of thing we see opponents do more regularly. I think had Oscar de la Hoya been 1 or 2 years younger, maybe not had inactivity problems, and had he used his jab a bit more, he may well have won the fight that night. I really think he did an effective job of pushing Floyd Mayweather back, controlling the pace of the fight, certainly through his volume. I think his jab was very effective when used. I think his body punching was very effective when used. And I think the combinations he was landing, I haven't really seen Floyd eating leather like that in the more recent fights. Don't get me wrong, this wasn't one-sided. Floyd was landing crisp work, Floyd's movement was very good. Defensively, Floyd was very sound, as always. You know, there was a lot to like about Floyd, and he probably did land, well, he definitely landed the more effective, cleaner work. But it surprised me in hindsight. You know, people talk about the Castillo fight, people talk about the Maidana fight, you know, people talk about the Zab Judah fight, the Shane Mosley fight, as fights where Floyd Mayweather was up against it. But I think this fight against an ageing, inactive Oscar de la Hoya, who'd been knocked out a fight or two previously by Bernard Hopkins, arguably does represent the best blueprint on how to beat Floyd Mayweather. If a fighter could bring what De La Hoya brought that day to a Floyd who's now slightly older and perhaps even lower volume and perhaps with slightly less dynamic movement, and if that fighter could perhaps just throw a few more jabs than Oscar De La Hoya, there's a chance of getting a win. I'm not saying it will happen. As I say, there was no particular purpose to this video. It's just that rewatching that, jogging my memory, I was actually surprised how close this fight was. And I think this was a genuinely close fight. Not like Marcus Maidana versus Floyd, where the man in the pub thinks that Marcus Maidana won, but us boxing fans understand Maidana got beaten. I genuinely think you'd be hard to say Oscar won less than 4 or 5 rounds in this fight. Yeah, he genuinely was effective for large periods of this fight, and I think if he'd made 1 or 2 slight adjustments, I think he could have got the job done. Obviously, it was a split decision. One of the judges actually scored it to Oscar. But let me know your thoughts on this one. If you remember it, if you remember how you scored it, if you think, like me, that this did represent one of Floyd's tougher fights. I'd also be interested in anyone's sort of opinions on the legacy of Oscar De La Hoya. Am I being a bit harsh when I say I don't consider him an all-time great? Is he better than I'm rating him? Let me know your thoughts. Thanks very much for watching.